Our story begins with a sad guy who sits alone in a taxi because his life has just been destroyed. But don't think that he is so simple. The real Ricardo Milos lives in this guy. It all started when his brother-in-law offered him an interesting way to make money. But in the end, our hero simply lost all his money due to financial problems. He and his wife began to quarrel more often, after which she simply packed her things and left him. His life was developing just as rapidly and just as quickly began to slide into hell. It was as if he was standing on the edge of an abyss. Every day was a series of endless failures. This morning there was also an incident, when some thug decided to have a fight with our main character. This is our boy's best friend named Nick Park Dong-woo, and he wants to know if Taegan has contacted him. Our hero's name is Minsk, and he already feels that the news will clearly not be pleasant, but still asks the reason for his interest. Nick Donegue strangely began to evade answering, and then our boy decided that he needed to be brought into the open. Still, he says that recently Taegan suggested that he go to a bar, and Minsk is surprised by these words. This is quite strange, because this guy makes very good money. Working as an obstetrician in a hospital, the friend starts making fun of Minsk because after his wife left him, he gained a lot of weight and now he can't find a girlfriend. He's probably lonely. As an apology for the bad joke, Nick offers to buy him an expensive drink when they agree to meet at a bar, and our hero agrees. But seeing Minsk's strange behavior, he realizes that something is wrong with him, and now it's his turn to ask him about his problems. Our hero cannot even get the words out of himself, and therefore simply sighs hopelessly. It's probably very difficult for him. If the boy has nothing to tell him, then he will probably go and leave his friend alone. But suddenly Nick Dong-woo says that it seems to him that Taegan and Yumi started dating, and this is the very reason why he called him to the bar. From these words, our hero's face immediately changed, as if he had seen an unsuccessful episode from the past. Minsk turns to his friend and asks how confident he is. In his words, he just can't believe that his ex-wife, young Yumi, is now in a relationship with Taegan. Nick Dong-woo says that for now, this is just a guess, but it would be better if our hero found out about this from his best friend than from Taegan. Minsk starts rummaging through his bag and says that it doesn't matter to him, because now he and his ex-wife are strangers to each other, after which he hands him an envelope and says that it contains interest for this month. Nick Dong-woo turns out to be a true friend and asks not to work so hard for him. If this payment is too much for him, then he can tell him about it in advance. But Minsk simply smiles back at him and asks his best friend not to worry about him because now this is not a problem for him. The action moves to the road where our hero stood in a traffic jam and argued with other drivers. Although he told his best friend that everything was fine with him, but in fact he felt like a complete insignificance. He was terribly angry that he and his ex-wife separated because of money, and now she decided to find herself a guy who has it. And finally, he can only wish her a happy life. While he was trying to get through the traffic jam, the guy thought that he was already used to the fact that he had been a loser all his life. But his bad luck did not end there. Minsk pulled his head out of the window and began screaming throughout the street. He could not understand why a traffic jam had formed near his house today. Suddenly, he noticed a young couple and an old man who bowed to them to apologize, a beefy dude with Hanma's body. Yujiro asked the old man if he wanted to continue living such a life, considering that he was already quite old. Grandfather had nothing to answer him. He was afraid to say a word, and so he just stood and looked at the floor. Minsk decided to hide a little in the crowd and watch the performance. He was wondering what the hell was going on there. At one point, our hero cannot stand the tension. He feels sorry for the old man and he shouts at the huge guy to move away from his grandfather. But this stupid jock didn't understand why the hell this little kid dared to object to the boss of this rocking chair. Maybe he wants to say it to his face and not shout from the crowd. Suddenly, our hero realizes that this is the same guy with whom he argued this morning near his house, and Minseok has already begun to come up with a plan to get away from here. Kachik also realized that it was just his upstairs neighbor and therefore simply waved his hand at him, telling him to calmly return to his apartment. Our hero understands all his weakness in front of such a strong opponent and therefore cannot answer him. The pumped-up guy says that only idiots live in this house and even the security won't help here. And our guy in the background is thinking about how to respond to this guy. His life is already full of pain and suffering from the failures he has experienced, but suddenly that guy tells him that he couldn't even save his own wife. These words work like a trigger in his head, and he breaks down after his thread of self-control broke. He was already running screaming at this big guy and hearing a strange sound from behind. The big guy decided to turn around after our main character woke up. He was in the police station because he was accused of assaulting a person, another failure. Now he is thinking about buying a lot of drinks to forget about. Today, Minseok was walking with a bag from the supermarket and thinking that today was simply not his day and a small series of failures could not break him. Suddenly, he again notices the old man for whom he decided to stand up. He was just removing garbage from the road and decided to approach him. Despite the fact that the boy was covered in bruises, he still had the strength to smile and he handed some kind of jar to the old man. Grandfather was very pleased that the guy paid attention to him, but this was not worth doing because it was because of him that our hero got into a fight. And Minsk turns out to be a real optimist and says that the old man is not to blame in this situation. He is simply asking the reason why he is on the street so late. It turns out that the grandfather was also waiting for our hero. He was so grateful for his action that he decided to give him a small gift. But Minseok says that he doesn't need anything, and waving his hand, he asked the watchman to just return home. Suddenly, the grandfather grabs his hands and says that our hero will not leave this place until he accepts the gift. It's better to take it because he definitely won't regret that he has such a thing. Suddenly, strange things begin to happen, and our boy feels an incomprehensible aura that envelops his body. He wondered what this strange feeling was, if his grandfather had some kind of unusual abilities. The old man simply threw up his hands and said that our hero received the promised gift. Minseok can't understand what the hell his grandfather is talking about. Maybe he'll at least explain what he just did, but he just says that he gave him a gift. It turns out that he knows that our hero is now going through a lot of difficulties, and so he decided that it would be a great idea to give the guy a new dream. From now on, Minsk will be able to go to the reality of his fantasies and live there like a real king. But our hero does not understand what the old man means by a fantasy world. He gives him short instructions before going to bed. He must imagine in detail the person he wants to see, and then his wish will come true, after which he must carefully imagine what will happen in this dream. For example, it could be a romantic dinner with a famous actress or imagine a date abroad. It can be anything, and it will seem much more real than the guy can imagine.